All right, boys, let's go. It's trainer panel time. Love this time when we can all get some of the FE trainers together just to discuss various topics in the world of health, fitness, working out, et cetera, et cetera. And today we have, looks like 4 of our FE trainers. We got Tony, we got Eddie, we got Ryan, and we got Jamie. And today, guys, I have kind of a key question for you. And that is, what is, Jamie, I know you've been writing a lot lately and we've been doing a lot of posts about skeletal muscle mass. So my question is, what exactly is skeletal muscle mass and why should I be concerned about it as an indicator of my fitness results and overall health? I guess is the main question that we're really after today. So Jamie, let's just start with you. Like, can you give us just a simple layman's definition of what skeletal muscle mass is?
I mean, skeletal muscle mass, as opposed to, let's say, lean body mass, skeletal muscle mass is simply the sinewy muscle that we have throughout our bodies. Now, we think of it in terms of something that makes us stronger, helps us to not fall down, helps us walk around, helps us to lift weight, but it is much, much more than that. It is a total endocrine system that not only does those things, but also provides a reservoir for all the energy intake that we consume as well through food. So it is much, much more than just what we think about as far as biceps and chest and legs. It actually performs a plethora of jobs throughout our bodies.
That's a very long definition. Tony, what's your take on what's your take on skeletal muscle mass and why we should be worried about it?
So when I meet with people for their assessments, they ask, "What is SMM?" So that is skeletal muscle mass, and I just simply say it's what your body, the muscles that your body used to do activity. And for me, now that we have the in-body and we have a much more accurate number to see what a person's skeletal muscle mass is, to me, it has replaced pretty much everything to see if they've improved or not, as far as if they're improving health-wise. I was never a big fan of weight, so I never really looked at weight. To me, if you're increasing your skeletal muscle mass, you've done awesome. If you've maintained your skeletal muscle mass, you've done awesome. Yeah. And that relates to body fat, because if more often than not, if you increase your skeletal muscle mass, you're probably decreasing your body fat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we lose skeletal muscle mass, by age 30, you lose like 3 to 5%. So it's very important to maintain that, to maintain function, to be strong, and just to be healthy. Like Jamie said, it plays a more important role than just having a six-pack or having big arms or having a big chest. It regulates your whole system.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on a point there that I wanted to bring up, and Ryan, I'll throw this at you. Like so many of us, when it comes to fitness results, we're consumed by the almighty scale and what our pounds are, whether we're looking to decrease pounds on the scale, or like somebody like myself who'd love to put 5 or 10 pounds on. We kind of become obsessed with that scale. What's your take on that, and where does skeletal muscle mass fit in for you in terms of importance or relevance relative to pounds?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And that's one thing that I really try to explain, especially during our assessment processes. It's scale weight really doesn't give us a lot of information, right? It's simply how much we actually weigh on the planet Earth in pounds. The most important thing is, what is that mass made up of? How much muscle mass do we have? How much of it is body fat? How much of it is fluid levels? And that's the really important factor that we need to take into consideration. Scale weight, if it doesn't change, but yet we see a difference in composition of the body, have that be a decrease in body fat percentage and an increase in skeletal muscle mass, maybe the scale weight stays the same, but we do have this difference in composition, in overall strength, and things like that. So do we need to focus on scale weight? Yeah, it is important, but it's not the end all be all, especially for people who maybe have a phobia of hopping on the scale, or maybe if they do have this obsession about how much they actually weigh and they don't see that scale changing, it's good to remind that individual that there is change happening in the body. Maybe it's not being affected or reflected on the scale, but there is change that should be occurring within the body.
Yeah, I think that's a big message that we want to get across in this trainer panel, right? Is that there's more to results than just the almighty pound and the scale weight. Like there's a whole big picture here that we're trying to look at. And sometimes some things are moving in the right direction, and sometimes some things may not be. But let's get a whole picture of what's going on rather than just a very tunnel visioned scale weight, right?
Exactly.
And I think
exactly.
the more like people train with us, the longer they train with us, they realize that.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that first come in, they might have, that's their first goal is to lose weight. And if that's their goal, that's their goal. And then we're going to focus on that. But they didn't realize how important everything else is. You know, you could feel great and lose a pound.
Yeah.
But what's more important, feeling better, moving better, living a healthier life, or losing 5 pounds over 1 pound.
Yeah.
You know, and as people continue to train with us even longer, they begin to realize that. And we kind of switch the mindset of scale is just one thing.
Exactly.
But again, if that's your goal, that doesn't mean that we're not going to focus on that goal. And
right. It just means there's
everything
more
else,
things to play.
yeah, everything else that we focus on will help with losing weight.
Yeah.
Hey,
Eddie,
kind of a side. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask Eddie real quick. Like Eddie is the youngest trainer that we have on this panel here. And Eddie, you're in like what, your mid-20s?
Yep, 25.
All right. So 25, you're working out regularly, training your butt off. Is skeletal muscle mass a concern for you at your age? Like, is that something on your radar? Well, let me ask you this. Was it on your radar before you came to Functional Elements? And is it more on your radar now, and why?
I would say that it was on my radar before, but a lot of what I was training for was primarily in kind of the performance realm. So trying to get stronger, faster. And I know that if I just continue to lift, continue to train, that my skeletal muscle mass will be fine. And part of that too is training intensity, but also part of that is because I'm in my early to mid 20s, I don't have to worry as much about maintaining or increasing skeletal muscle mass.
Yeah.
For me, it's always been a matter of if I'm training hard and if I'm eating a lot of calories, I'll maintain or even gain a little bit of skeletal muscle mass. But part of that is because of my age, and it's easier for me to do that. One thing I'm more aware of as I've started training here is, as far as clients go, kind of understanding the importance of skeletal mass maintenance, especially as you get older. And because, like Jamie talked about earlier, it's an entire system, and it keeps us moving better, preventing us from falling down and leading to a generally healthier lifestyle. But also, it's just an easy marker of how well training is going, as opposed to just like the guys talked about, looking at the scale. If I've got someone who's 65 years old and working out, and maybe they're not losing weight, but they're maintaining or slightly increasing skeletal muscle mass, that's huge.
Yeah.
Or if I got someone maintaining skeletal muscle mass as they're getting older, that's just as big as if they're gaining muscle mass kind of at a younger age, because we're keeping them healthier, we're keeping them stronger, more functional. So I would say for me, since I started working here, it's just the reinforcing how important it is to stay on top of that and keep track of that. As you get older and older, it becomes of higher and higher importance, as opposed to, in my case where, if I just, work out consistently, eat a lot, yeah, I mean, I'll probably be fine. I'll gain muscle mass or keep muscle mass, but having a more concerted effort, especially as you're starting to get those factors of age coming up against you, is kind of where I've shifted my focus a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan.
Tell you what, Eddie.
No, go ahead.
I want to say something. I mean, Eddie, you're such a bragger. Honestly, just young. I can build muscle when I want. I eat whatever. Don't worry about it. Right.
But it's a good perspective, Jamie, because I know you mentioned like when you were in your 20s and training and like, lifting heavy and flexing the guns and all that stuff. Like it was about body fat for you, but your goals have evolved. Like SMM, skeletal muscle mass, is a high priority.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. I mean, I was in the same boat Eddie is right now.
Yeah.
But as I get older, part of it is the desire to train like that. I no longer have a desire to train by trying to lift a house. Yeah. I'm looking more at functionality, but that doesn't negate that I got to put my time in to stimulate from a strength standpoint and a hypertrophy standpoint or muscle growth standpoint. I got to put my time in to keep what I have. and even increase it along with how I'm regulating my food and nutrition with it.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, Ryan, let me back up one step here to a very basic component that maybe we've alluded to a little bit on this, but I don't think we've really dove in as much as we need to. How does one measure their skeletal muscle mass?
There's a number of ways. The way that we do at FE, we use a InBody 570 scan. It's basically a very high-tech BIA, which is a bioelectrical impedance analysis. That being said, long-term to see how fast the current can travel through your body from limb to limb. The only thing, well, not the only thing, one of the most it seems like hydration level has a big impact on that. That's why there are certain protocols that we do ask clients to follow, and one of those is no fluid, water, coffee, whatever it is, at least 45 minutes before, and absolutely no alcohol 24 hours before an in-body scan, because it does have a pretty big impact on the effectiveness of that scan. So we use the in-body scan. There are a number of other ways to use it or to determine the percent body fat. It could be a caliper method, which we did in the past. There is a lot of user error with that, but we find that in-body is one of the most accurate tools that you can use to determine skeletal muscle mass, body fat percentage, and hydration levels from a cellular level.
Yeah, like it's a magical tool, right? Like it's basically
It's incredible.
stepping on it for 45 seconds, holding the grips, and that's all you have to do for 45 seconds, and you get a whole page of just amazing data on yourself, on your body, including skeletal muscle mass, just by standing there for 45 seconds, like totally non-invasive.
It's very simple. It is very it's not there's nothing to be fearful of, right?
Yeah.
Before you had somebody grabbing your stomach, grabbing your obliques, pinching your thigh, pinching your chest. It was very invasive. This is just you and a machine, close the door, see what it is, get the printout, let's look at the data, and let's discuss it and see what changes need to be made.
Yeah. Eddie, you have anything else you want to brag about at this point?
No, that's it for me. That's it for me as far as brags go.
Hey, Tony,
Yeah.
so Jamie alluded to this a little bit, but expand on it. Like what type of training is going to build skeletal muscle mass? Like what types of things should we be doing to build our skeletal muscle mass?
What FE does, which is strength training, resistance training, that is the most accurate and most meaningful way to build skeletal muscle mass. And you can't build so skeletal muscle mass is different from your heart muscle, cardiac muscles. You can build that through aerobic training, but again, there's hundreds, about 500-600 muscles in your body that if you don't move in different ways and you don't move with added resistance, you're not going to build it. So resistance training is the go-to, the best way to build skeletal muscle mass.
Okay. Hey, Jamie, I know there's another quote that I've seen from you that I want you to expand upon real quick here too, before we wrap this up. And that is, what was it? Skeletal muscle mass is kind of like body armor.
Mm-hmm.
Makes us harder to kill.
Makes us harder to kill. From a standpoint of the more muscle mass you can carry, the harder to kill you will be. From a standpoint of, obviously, if you fall, if you're in a car accident, it absorbs shock, it protects your organs. So in that aspect, you're harder to kill. Yeah. When you have viruses, illnesses, even going as far as cancer, heart problems, issues, it will sustain you and maintain you for a much longer period the more you have. So in essence, from accidents to viruses, bacteria to chronic disease, the more muscle mass you have, it's going to make you harder to kill. So in that essence, yes, it is total body armor.
Yeah.
And one more way, and like we mentioned movement, if somebody's chasing you with a gun, you can run away better.
It's true. Yeah,
but that's true. You move better. You move better with the leaner you are, more muscle mass you have, you're able to move better in all different directions.
Mm-hmm.
So Tony, you did speak about movement right there. I mean, another thing that skeletal muscle mass does help with preventing you from dying is, what's the number one source that muscles use for energy? It's glucose, right? What's a huge problem in today's society? Type 2 diabetes. What is type 2 diabetes? It's, and I'm sure Jamie, you can go into this more. It's just that the more that we exercise, the more that we move, the more that the muscles require that source of energy being glucose, the less impact we're going to have with the pancreas and with the receptor sites of those cells, because we're not being flooded, right? There's a purpose for that energy instead of being stored as adipose tissue and things like that. You know, I think that's a big thing that people often think of, that they don't think about is, yeah, I want to build muscle so that I can move and so that I can increase strength and maybe I don't break a bone when I fall, things like that. But also from a hormonal standpoint, the increases of testosterone and growth hormone, the ability to regulate diabetic hormones as far as glucose, that's a huge, huge factor that increasing skeletal muscle mass and just overall moving exercise has for us.
Yeah, good stuff.
I mean, to piggyback on that very quickly is to build upon what you're saying, Ryan, is skeletal muscle mass is our largest reservoir, as I mentioned earlier, of energy usage. So if you're taking in carbohydrate or fat or protein, the more muscle mass you have, the more active those muscles are, the greater the opportunity for your body to use that energy. And what's one of the problems in regard to diabetes is there's a flood of glucose that doesn't have anywhere to go. Yeah, so if you give your muscles the opportunity to use more energy, you're going to downregulate, or you're going to reduce your risk of diabetes, heart issues, cancer issues, Alzheimer's. I mean, muscle, like I said, is that endocrine system that provides a body armor or a protection against even these chronic diseases. And one we didn't mention is osteoporosis. You know, if we don't stimulate the muscles enough, put enough tension on those muscles, that's not going to put enough tension on the bones, and the bones will deteriorate as well. So overall, I mean, skeletal muscle mass is our driving force behind health.
I have a cool osteoporosis thing that one of my clients, we won't give out names, but we'll just, MP is her initials, and she had a bone scan in March, so earlier this year, and she hadn't had one in 2 years, and that's about the time she started consistently resistance training. And she grew her spinal bone density by 5% and her hip bone density by 2.5%.
Wow, not only maintained it, but actually stimulated bone mineral density. That's awesome.
Yeah, so
And at a later age too, like that's so important.
So like, Tony, don't you think that's a huge message for people? Like, I think we think like as we get older, all we can do is have a skeletal muscle
what I
like we
always
can
tell
actually
people.
build it.
Yeah, what I always tell people, it's never too late. I mean,
Right.
doing something is like that old, verbiage of doing something is better than nothing. It really is true. Like, you just need to do it. And once you get in the habit of doing it, and if that's what it becomes habit, becomes part of your life, and you'll reap the benefits.
Yeah, exactly. And Eddie, like, just real quick, it's all about measuring it and following the trend consistently, right? Like if I go in and get my skeletal muscle mass checked today, and I know my reading, that's one thing, but it's all about the trend and whether or not it's maintaining, decreasing, increasing, so you know exactly what to do and change in your programming, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you're trying to track progress, I mean, you have to track it, right? And especially when you're talking about a marker like skeletal muscle mass, you got to have the consistent information on that, no matter what your goal is, right? Like we talked about all different types of people, different types of fitness goals. No matter what your fitness goal is, skeletal muscle mass is going to be applicable in some respect towards that goal. I mean, if you're trying to lose body fat, you want to maintain or increase skeletal muscle mass along with that to improve body composition. Or if you're getting older, you want to increase or maintain skeletal muscle mass so you're stronger and you're going to be able to handle more obstacles in life. Any goal you have, you want to keep that skeletal muscle mass as a primary marker for progress. And if you're trying to keep track of any type of progress, you have to have some way of consistently measuring it and tracking it, which is why having that consistent data is so important in training.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's wrap this up. Any final tidbits about skeletal muscle mass?
Watch this, then go train.
Yeah, I think the two key things we want to leave with, right, are put skeletal muscle mass on your results radar. Like, you know, if it's new to you, get used to it and start tracking it. And
consider skeletal muscle mass as one of our greatest commodities.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to facilitate that.
Yep. And then, you know, make sure you have a reliable source where you can get in and test it out consistently and follow that trend.
Mm-hmm. No doubt.
All right, cool guys. Good info. Thanks for the time. We'll go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll get another trainer panel going soon. Thanks a lot.
So, yeah.
Hey, boys.
Later.
See you guys.